Although they are known to possess a vast and extraordinary collection of antiques, not a single member of the Collins family is aware of the many cursed objects in their midst. But they will soon learn the truth, a truth that will lead to misfortune, madness, and terror at Collinwood. Welcome to Terror at Collinwood. I am your hostess, Penny Dreadful, aka Danielle, and I have got an amazing show for you guys today. You are not going to believe the sights that are in store for you. My guest today is Jeff Kenny, who is co-administrator of the Dark Shadows Collectibles Facebook group. He's been a hardcore Dark Shadows fan since April of 1990 and has a particular love for Seaview Terrace, attending the annual events and immersing himself in studying the history of the house. In fact, Jeff even has a truly epic tattoo of Collinwood on his arm. He is a mega collector of Dark Shadows merchandise and is one of the only people that I know of who once owned the Ben Cooper Barnabas Collins costume and mask with the original box. That blows my mind. That is like a grail item. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Before we get started, I want to mention that while the audio version of this is going out to all the feeds like Apple Podcasts, etc., this is also going to be a video version of the podcast, which you will get to see if you go to the Terror at Collinwood YouTube channel, so that you can follow along and look at all the items that Jeff has very kindly brought with him to show us. I also have my backdrop here with my Dark Shadows collection back here, and you can see part of my monster collection here on the side too. This is my monster room. So this is where I go to commune with the spirits of Collinwood here. So first of all, okay, Jeff, before anything else, can tell us about your Collinwood tattoo. I would love to see the Collinwood tattoo.
So,
there it is. Wow. Look at that. That is amazing. Wow. That is so cool.
Yeah.
I love that you did it in grayscale too. So what inspired you to do the Collinwood tattoo, and how long did it take to do that?
Well, I've always wanted the Dark Shadows tattoo. I mean, for a long time, and I could never decide on what to get. I was thinking about getting Barnabas at one point, but I don't know. I just couldn't decide on a picture of him that I liked, and so eventually I just decided to get Collinwood because, I mean, not only do I love the show, but I also love the house as well. I attend regular private parties and events at the house every year, and I've become, like you said, I've become a historian for the house. I've really studied the history of it, going back to all of its previous incarnations and the entire construction of it. And so I figured it works on both levels, and plus it's helpful whenever I do tours of the house with our private groups, or just talking to anybody about the house. I can always reference the tattoo and point out specific rooms on there. Yeah. That I even had, there was an article written about my tattoo. I got it back in 2014. Actually, just I think yesterday was the anniversary of getting the tattoo.
Oh, awesome.
Because I wanted to have it before the festival, the 2014 fest. Mm-hmm. And my cousin owns a tattoo shop, and he did it for me. All said and done, it was only about an hour and a half worth of work.
Really?
And that was including him tracing the image, because I provided him with a picture of it, mm-hmm. of what I wanted, and then he just kind of traced it and then laid it out on my arm. And it only took about an hour and a half. He's pretty good at what he does.
Great. Yeah, I saw the article a while back on the Collinsport Historical Society. I think they did a piece
Yeah,
on your tattoo. And I've seen some, I mean, that is one of the best Dark Shadows tattoos I've ever seen. I've seen some really good ones, but that one is incredible at just the amount of space it takes up on your arm. It's a perfect place for it too, because it's
yeah,
right across the arm. I've always wanted to do it. I have some tattoos and I've always wanted to do a Dark Shadows tattoo, but I can never settle on what I want. I'm thinking
yeah,
of just doing like Barnabas's hand with the ring and the cane, and maybe in the background a little you see some of Collinwood. Just
yeah.
maybe, I don't know. I had, like I said, I haven't settled on it yet. So what got you into Dark Shadows in the first place? Like what brought you to Dark Shadows?
Well, my mom and my grandma and my great grandma were all fans of it back when it was originally on in the 60s. My mom used to watch it mostly with her grandmother, because my grandmother worked all the time, but she watched it when she could. And then one day when I was just about 7, it was just before my 7th birthday, because it would have been April. I was with my mom at our local video store and they had a couple of the tapes there. And she was like, "Oh, I used to watch that when I was a kid." And so we decided to rent it and we got them home, and I just became hooked ever since. MPI used to release the 4 tapes a month, and every month we'd go and rent all 4 of them from the store, and I'd get through all of them within about 2 days,
Yeah.
and then I had to wait another month for the next batch of tapes to come out.
Mhm.
So, everybody used to always talk about, having to run home from school to watch it, but at least they got to watch it every day, essentially. That I had to wait 28 days for the next batch to come out.
Yeah.
But it just, ever since then, I started collecting what I could, even as a little kid. Right around that time, my grandma got me the Dark Shadows Companion for Christmas,
Mhm.
because it was just right around the time they released it. And then I bought myself one of the original LP vinyl soundtracks of the show. Found that at the store, and one of the little old Marilyn Ross paperback books. I found that at a store, and all this was before I was 10 years old. So I've been collecting ever since I was a child.
Wow.
Yeah.
So wow, years of collecting Dark Shadows merchandise. Like,
Yeah.
do you collect other things, or was Dark Shadows like your primary focus for collecting?
I mean, I mostly collect Dark Shadows. I'll pick up anything that I think looks cool or attached to another favorite show that I like, or I have some Munsters stuff. I'm really big into collecting different Lego sets as well.
Mhm.
I'm a nerd about that.
No,
I
my
build,
friend Meredith is a
yeah.
huge Lego fan. She has an epic Lego collection. Yeah.
I like to build them with my nephew. He's 7 years old.
Uh-huh.
I'll get him a set and I'll get myself a set,
Yeah.
and we build together. And but I mean, I collect a lot of different stuff, but my main focus has always been Dark Shadows.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. Now, what are some of I know you have some pieces with you, so why don't you show us, if you don't mind, some of the things you brought with you? Like, what are some of your favorite items, and some items that are kind of, somebody wants to get into collecting Dark Shadows, like what are some key things that they should look for?
Well, they've been releasing Dark Shadows merchandise, I mean, since the show was on the air, and they've continued releasing merchandise throughout the years.
Mhm.
But the biggest collectible that a lot of people always try to get was the Dark Shadows coffin set, the 131 disc coffin set,
Yes.
DVD set. So you have one on your shelf behind you back there.
Yes. Yeah. The
That
centerpiece there.
yeah, I've got mine, which is
Oh, look at that. Signed all over. Oh, talk. Can you tell us about that?
yeah.
Like, how did this come about?
So I got it when it first came out, and I in 2016 I took my grandma to the Dark Shadows Festival with me. Actually, behind me on the wall there is a picture of us at the banquet together at that festival.
Mhm.
Um, it was her very first fest. I mean, she had been a fan since the show was on originally.
Yeah.
She was the one that couldn't watch it all the time back then because she worked, but she always watched it with me as a kid growing up. And at the 2016 festival, the final fest, I brought her with, and she was in a wheelchair. She was an amputee, And so they had the long line, but you go through to meet each one of the actors at their tables. And so I was wheeling her in the chair. She was holding on to it's a pretty good sized coffin. She was holding on to her
Oh,
lap,
that's
and she
great.
put it up on the table to have each actor sign. And
Oh,
all the actors loved her. They were all very nice to her. And there's two actors on here that are no longer with us as well, John Carlin and Chris Penick.
yeah.
They were at the fest, and Chris was a good friend that I ran his official fan group with him. And we didn't always
Wow.
agree on a lot of things. He was kind of an out there kind of guy, but I still loved him. He was a good guy though.
Oh, he was fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know you ran his fan group. That's really cool.
I still do it. It's
Yeah.
it's still up.
Okay.
It's not as updated anymore ever since he passed away, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. But what a great memory to have with your grandmother going around the festival and getting that coffin set signed by all the actors who were there. That's really cool. What a great item to have and a unique thing to have in your collection for sure. What are some of the other items you have here? And I'll have to remember to describe for the audio listeners so that we can.
I've got I like to collect original film material as well.
Mhm.
Like I have a bunch of the original kinescopes for the show, which at the time, besides doing the actual regular recording, for a lot of vintage television shows they had a camera pointed at a monitor to record a backup copy. And for other markets, they needed the kinescopes as well. And a lot of these kinescopes were all that remain of some of the episodes. Like when you watch the show, you'll be watching a bunch of color episodes, and all of a sudden there's a low quality black and white episode that was from a kinescope. That all that was remaining of the original episode. That I've got.
Oh, look at that. World Vision Enterprises, the syndicator. Yeah.
Yeah. They so World Vision got all the rights to them, and they bought all of them up, but it is an original.
Oh, the canister with the kinescope in it. Look at that. ABC. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does it say which episode that is on the outside?
This one was number 76.
76. Oh, so it's an early pre-Barnabas one. Yeah.
So besides having the kinescopes from World Vision, I also have at the 2012 festival, they were giving away a bunch of the actual World Vision master tapes from the show.
Look at that. Wow.
This was episode 737.
Wow.
These were the ones that went to the Sci-Fi Channel.
I see.
When you watch the episodes on the Sci-Fi Channel, they were being played from these.
Those are big, big tapes. Was that like a 3/4 inch tape or 3 and 3/4? 1 inch tape. A big tape. That's okay. It's a reel. It's a reel. I see. Okay. Yeah. Wow.
But if you ever watch the show on the Sci-Fi Channel, they're being played from these.
Yeah, I wonder if because the show was syndicated in South America and Latin countries, and they sent the episodes down there. And I know there's that one missing episode, the 1219, I think.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's down there somewhere in some like old TV station vault or something.
That would be awesome. It's not been found yet. I brought with me one of my Spanish kinescopes.
Oh, great.
That
yeah.
Let's see, like the Spanish language.
Sombras tenebrosas.
But I love to collect all kinds of original film material. I even have a 16 millimeter print from MGM of House of Dark Shadows.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, it's big.
That's big. Yeah.
It's got the MGM logo on it. They sent it out for distribution purposes or display purposes back. This one was from 1988.
Wow. Where were you getting this? Was this at the festivals that you were picking these up?
This one was eBay.
Okay.
I got a lot of my stuff from eBay, other collectors. I pick it up wherever I can.
Mm-hmm.
My friend Chad, he was a big collector as well, and I wound up buying a lot of his collection from him.
I see. Mm-hmm.
That because he got out of collecting, and just moving around is hard to move all that stuff with you.
Sure. Yeah. I understand that. Yeah.
but I mean, going back with collecting, MPI back in the day when, pre really internet days, they used to send out the paper catalogs.
Yes, yep. I have a
Starting,
bunch of those, yeah.
yeah, I've got all of them going back to 1989.
Oh, wow, from the very beginning. Very cool.
Yeah, that was the first one
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
that
Yeah, it's Barnabas in front of the clock. Yeah.
but let's see, I think I've got an open one here. This is from 1992.
Oh, yeah.
I remember anticipating all these when I was a kid, getting them in the mail
Me
every
too.
year. Because I had signed up for the Dark Shadows fan club when I was a kid through
Mhm.
MPI. And I had the little ID card, but
Sure.
that also signed me up. I started getting all the mailers from the festival and through MPI and all that.
Yeah.
But they had like little summaries in there, like the different releases that were coming out at the time.
Yeah. Yep. I remember
The
that. Yeah.
different tapes.
Yeah. I was probably my like late, or well, I was already going into my late teens, into my early 20s, but I remember being like super excited to get those catalogs in the mail. They just were really exciting. And of course, when they were going into the episodes that weren't syndicated in the last year of the show, I mean, that was just really exciting to see those coming out on home video.
Yeah, I mean, and it's nice because not only do they have the Dark Shadow stuff in there, but there are other releases from Dan Curtis in there as well.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
some of the other stuff that MPI put out, like the different Dan Curtis horror films, his takes on them, like Dracula and Frankenstein. And
Yeah, the Macabre collection. I still have that somewhere. Yeah.
That I actually have. This is the original soundtrack LP that I got when I was a kid.
Oh, look at that. Did it have the poster?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
I probably have at least 10 of these at home.
No kidding.
Right
wow.
Because there was one day somebody on eBay was selling a lot that had a bunch of the soundtracks in it, some books in it, and so I got it all for like $50. I couldn't pass it up, so I figured that I'd buy them and resell the extra ones. I'd find the ones that were in good condition. And because like even like with the old paperback books, the Marilyn Ross ones, if I had one already, if I found another copy that was in better shape or an earlier printing of it, I'd have to get it. And so I have so many extra paperbacks. And for a while with the paperbacks, the first 3, they had the art covers.
Yes. Yep.
But then because these were put out before Jonathan Frid even joined the show.
Yeah, those were the first Dark Shadows collectibles, were the Ross novels, because they started December 66, I think, was when the first one came out. Yeah.
And then once he joined the show, they re-released them with the photo covers. Even though he wasn't in the first couple, they put out the photos with him on it just to tie it in with the show because he was so popular.
Yeah.
But I mean, I still have some like really popular collectible items that that for some reason have gone up so much in value. Like even like this one, the Dark Shadows Cookbook.
Yes, that one is very expensive. Yeah.
It's a little paperback book. Or
the cookbook is, and I was interviewing Sabrina Herman from Hermes Press, and she said they really want to reissue the cookbook. So hopefully they will, because I think that's one that a lot of people would like to have in their collections, but it's kind of, some people get priced out on that one.
Yeah, this is another one, Shadows on the Wall.
Shadows on the Wall, yeah.
I've got a couple of copies of this. That
yeah, that's the Art Wallace story Bible for Dark Shadows. It's Pomegranate Press put that out, right?
This one was it Pomegranate?
Or was it the festival? Or was it?
I'm pretty sure this was through the festival.
Through the festival, okay.
It's just marked as Dan Curtis Productions.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I mean, those have gone up significantly. They were only just they're around $10 when they first came out originally.
Yep.
And they can be 10 times that now.
Yeah.
At least they go for on eBay.
Some of the books, I mean, they reissued, they did, the history of Dark Shadows, the festival put out, but then they put out a slick version of the Dark Shadows the first year, which summarizes the first year of the show. And that book goes for hundreds of dollars. I've seen on eBay.
It was nice. I actually got that at the 2014 festival in one of the auctions that Jim was doing, Jim Pearson. And I think I paid $80 for it in the auction.
Wow.
And it almost never pops up. So, I mean, I couldn't pass it up.
Yeah.
But with the books now, another one of my favorite newer items that's now unfortunately sold out is the book that I helped Bob Issel and Mark Rainey put together, Our Shadowed Past, which I know you also have a chapter in.
Yes.
Well.
Yeah. It's a great book. I mean, it's just so beautiful. The layout is gorgeous. The content is amazing. It's such a diverse cast of characters in there of all the different fans that wrote their memories and studio kids, actors, people involved with the show. I mean, it's just a celebration of the fandom of Dark Shadows. I love that book.
I did a lot of the photo retouching because, for a lot of the people the fans that wrote stories for it, they submitted photos of themselves from around the time that they first discovered the show. And a lot of them weren't in the best of shape because they're older pictures. So I did a lot of touch up on those. And then I did a layout on all the photo pages, like these.
That looks great. Yeah. Our Shadowed Past. I know. Is that sold out? You said
it's now officially sold out as of just recently.
Oh,
it was only a limited run of about 300 books. And they've all just finally sold out.
You guys did such a great job on that. And I hope Bob will, for fans that may want it, hopefully Bob will revisit it at some point, maybe do another run.
There's ideas that have been discussed. If not another print run, we may do like Kindle.
Oh, that's a good idea. That's a good idea.
But I mean, nothing is set in stone right now. Still trying to get that all figured out and what would go into doing something like that. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to ask you. Do you have any? So you have a lot of the books. Do you have the comics too? I would imagine the Gold Key comic books.
I have literally every Dark Shadows comic book that has ever been released. All the different series, all the different variant covers that Dynamite, when they started coming out with their newer series, they love doing variant covers. That's a whole popular thing nowadays. So I have all of them. There was the original series from Gold Key.
Yeah. Oh, great.
This is #1 with the poster and tag on the inside.
Yeah, it's tough to get that one especially with the poster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, Innovation did their series based on the 1991 Revival series.
Yes, the painted comics, yeah.
And then some years back, Dynamite started releasing their series. And then they spun it off into Dark Shadows Year One.
Yep.
And then Dark Shadows and Vampirella.
Yes. Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
But
I have those too.
There was a crossover that they did as well with Kolchak, the Night Stalker.
I have that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Moonstone did that, right? Yeah.
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 Yeah. I've got it in a box down here.
Yeah. I'd love to see a new Dark Shadows comic book series come out at some point. Like, it just seems like that should be a recurring thing that they.
It seems like kind of every couple decades, because, you had the Gold Key originally, and then the Innovation series in 91 into 92. And then the Dynamite series within the last 10 years. So, I mean, you never know. I mean, the problem is physical media, like print media, like that is just, it's tough nowadays. It's just slowly going away and being replaced by digital.
It is, sadly.
Any kind of media, audio, visual, it's all being replaced.
Yeah, it's true. And it's unfortunate. There's something about that tactile feeling of holding a book in your hand that's you can't replicate with digital. I know what you mean. Yeah. Now, do you have, we've seen a lot of print stuff. How about, I love toys. I collect a lot of figures and toys and things like that, as you can see behind me here. Are you a collector of those items as well, or primarily paper?
No, I do a mix of everything, whatever I can get my hands on. The only things I really didn't ever really get into were like the old fanzines.
Oh yes.
It's just, I'm not really, I only have so much storage space for all the stuff. And the fanzines, that's kind of, it starts to snowball between all the different ones that were released. That and plus they're not all fan fiction, but I've never been a huge fan fiction person myself.
Yeah.
I do love all the Big Finish releases,
Mhm.
the audio dramas and full cast, and those have been I've really been loving those over the years.
It's great to hear the actors reprising their roles and
Definitely doing
doing
all
that.
new, some of them new characters, new storylines, and it
Mhm.
all started with Return to Collinwood.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, Blair.
Yeah.
That's what kind of started the whole ball rolling. Um, balls don't run.
Unless they have legs.
You know, I've always been a fan of, you know, I've got a lot of the audio as
Oh,
well.
look at that. Oh yeah, me
Soundtracks.
too. Yeah, all you have all the soundtracks.
Oh yeah, every single one of them. I've got
Great.
even the different versions, even the 91
Yep.
series soundtrack. It's hard to tell, but that's signed by Bob Colbert.
Oh, very cool. Look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I love autograph stuff too.
Mhm.
And it's just, I collect what I can. It's been an obsession since I was a kid.
Mhm.
It kind of waned a little bit in my teenage years. But back around 2004, when they started announcing all the news for the WB pilot that they were working on, it just kind of rekindled my love for the show. And, you know, that was all actually really thanks to Stuart Manning.
Mhm.
Because, you know, he was at the time, he was running Collinwood.net, which was like the big news page at the time, which eventually became the Dark Shadows news page.
Yeah.
But that's where I was getting all the updates on the series. I followed, you know, from the casting all the way through production, and then its eventual failure, and
Yeah.
didn't get picked up. But that right around that time is when it really started to rekindle my love of the show. I mean, I've always loved the show, but it kind of wasn't my main focus for several years, you know,
Mhm.
throughout my teen years. But it just, and ever since then, I've just become obsessed with buying as much as I could.
Yeah.
That
Mhm. What are some of the Grail items like that? I know I remember, you showed me the pictures of your the Barnabas Ben Cooper
yeah,
costume, which blows my mind that you had that. I know Wally Winger had that too, the voice actor,
yeah,
and he has that in his collection. But that's so rare, that Ben Cooper, like on a level of rarity, that must be maybe the rarest Dark Shadows collectible, or at least one of the
Ben Cooper costume and the old Magic slates.
magic slates.
There
Yeah,
were two
those are
different
really
Magic
cool.
slates that were made, and
Mhm.
those are really holy grail items.
Yeah.
There's one that's been sitting on eBay for several years now. The person's asking about $1,000 for.
Yeah.
It's a little high for something like that, but the Ben
And
Cooper costume
mhm,
I got for a decent deal. I mean, relatively speaking. And then I listed it on eBay last summer, um, just to see what I would get for it. And two people got into a big bidding war on it and bid it up to about $1,450.
wow.
So I
Wow.
mean,
Yeah.
the Ben Cooper costume and the Magic Slates are probably two of the biggest holy grails.
Yeah.
There's
And wait,
some
how
that are
many years ago did you sell that one? The
just
coop.
last summer.
Oh, it was last summer. I see.
Yeah,
Okay. Mhm.
yeah. That I was going out to the East Coast to go stay at Seaview, you know, Collinwood, and it essentially paid for my whole trip. And I was
Yeah.
there for two of us because I took my cousin with me
Uh-huh.
for that one. And no, it was really good. That it had the original box. There's probably only maybe 5 tops that I know of that still exist.
Yeah.
So I mean, those old costumes were just those thin vinyl,
Yeah.
you know, shirts that were made to be worn that one Halloween and then disposed of.
Right.
Um, and
Yeah.
they have, yeah, sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, I mean, it's like you said, I've seen before I started seeing like years ago in the zines and stuff. I remember people talking about, and there was debate as to whether there was even the apron for the costume. It was just, some people thought it was just the mask alone, but then somebody turned up the whole shebang, and then it confirmed, yes, this was an entire costume set, and this was pre-internet. This was, I remember, back in the day. So those things are so, like you said, the vinyl costumes are so fragile, and they can get melted, and all kinds of bad stuff can happen to those. I would be terrified almost to have one of those in my collection, because as cool as it would be, if anything happened to it, I'd be like, oh no.
Well, I had the shirt itself, the smock. It had been folded in this box in its original box for probably decades. I mean, since it
Yeah.
was new. So along the fold lines, the creases, it had developed a couple little slits and everything in it. But I mean, it was still in good shape. I had intended on kind of seeing if I could restore it some, because there's techniques of kind of bringing it back to life a little bit and getting rid of the creases, and I had all the intentions of doing it, but it just sat in. I got a acrylic plastic protective case for it,
Oh, good. Yeah,
to
cool.
keep it in, and it just sat in that for a good couple years. I never got around to getting it all fixed up. I was planning on making like a shadow box with the costume and the mask and the
Oh, that's
box,
cool. Yeah.
but it just never came to fruition. So I decided to let it go.
Yeah. Did you have the magic slates as well?
Those have
Okay.
been holy grail items for me. I purchased one at one point, but it turned out to be a reproduction version.
Yeah, I see there's a reproduction on eBay, and I've thought about getting it, but I always have the mixed feelings about repro stuff, because it's like, well, it's cool to have, but it's not the real one, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's the reproductions. I mean, they've been good for people who
Mm.
couldn't get the original.
Yeah.
Good friend of mine actually used to make all of those back in the day.
Oh, nice.
Um, that he made the magic slates. He was known for, he did a lot of the shirts, and he actually, for the Ben Cooper costume, he made a t-shirt version of the smock that
Oh,
actually
yes. I know
glowed in the
exactly
dark.
who you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
That but yeah, no, it's the reproduction stuff is really cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not the original. It'll never be the original.
Somebody's doing reproductions of the bubblegum card boxes, like the
Yeah,
boxes that the cards came in, which I think is a really cool idea, because those boxes are really
yeah,
expensive too, tough to come by.
yeah. But yeah, no, that stuff is all really cool. I even have there's a lot of fan made stuff too. Like I actually have a fan made Barnabas Pez.
That's awesome. Oh, the Barnabas Pez. Look at that. It has the Basil Gogos famous
Yeah,
monsters background, and then you got the Pez dispenser in there. Oh, that
that's
is really cool.
I actually met Basil Gogos a couple years ago before he passed away,
Oh, me
and I
too.
had him
Yeah.
sign my copy of Famous Monsters
I
that he
love
made.
it.
But yeah, that's
Oh, look at that. Oh, that's
focus.
great.
Yeah,
That is so cool. I love it. Yeah, I
Yep.
have, if you can see up there, I have the Barnabas a print that I got
Yeah,
from Basil Gogos at Monster Bash one year
nice.
when he was there, and he signed it for me as well. Yeah.
He was a really nice guy. Unfortunately, when I met him, it was getting towards the end, and he was physically not as capable. He had a handler with him that actually helped him sign
I
the
see.
autographs. So
Oh gosh.
he was
Yeah.
a really nice guy. He was nice to meet. It just physically, he just wasn't in the best of shape at the time.
Right, right. Yeah. Now, what about the horror head pillows? Do you have those? Those are tough to get too.
Those are other grail items that there's probably as many of those out there as the Ben Cooper costumes.
Wow.
I know a couple people that have them, not the full sets, and also not with original boxes either.
Yeah.
The original cardboard boxes for them are even harder to find than the pillows.
Yeah. There were three. There was Barnabas, the werewolf, and the witch, which didn't look
Yeah,
anything like Angelique. I always thought that was odd that they made a witch for the Dark Shadows thing, but it wasn't Angelique.
yeah, the werewolf was kind of generic too. The only one they
Yeah.
actually got the license of is Jonathan Frid for Barnabas.
Yeah. Is that the most common one, or no? Or are they equally
They're
difficult to get?
equally as difficult to find.
Mhm.
That's another one that my friend also made reproductions of, and he also made a couple of his own versions of different characters as
Oh,
well.
cool.
That
Cool.
he doesn't make any of this stuff anymore,
Mhm.
but yeah, no, those were all really cool. But those are other holy grail items that are just impossible to find.
Yeah.
But there was even like the different board games back in the day.
Mhm.
There was the Dark Shadows board game and the Barnabas Collins board game.
Yeah, those are great. Yeah.
Yeah, this one. Barnabas
Yeah.
Collins.
That's a classic. Yeah. The Barnabas
Um,
Collins game.
and even in this one, there were different versions of it. There were the ones with the blue sides, and there's one with the gray sides.
Mhm.
So it just collectors like myself that are completists. It drives it drives me nuts because I have to have it all. And
Right. Right.
but with the games aren't really that uncommon. You can find them fairly cheap. The problem
Mhm.
is finding them with the original little plastic fangs that used to come with them.
Yes.
Those
Yep.
those fangs alone can drastically drive up the value of the game.
Yeah.
They also did things like the Jigsaw Puzzles.
Yes. Yep.
Uh,
Mhm.
I really like the artwork that they had on these.
Yeah. Barnabas in the cemetery with a
Yeah,
dog. And then they had,
the
which,
one in like the tomb crypt kind of.
yeah, with the lady vampire and
Yeah.
he's walking, like showing off the,
Yeah,
yeah.
that one never really. I mean, the art was really cool on that one. But I definitely like the art on the white one better.
Yes.
But I mean, there's some autographs out there that are really hard to obtain. I've got a couple of years ago, I purchased from Matthew Hall, Grayson Hall's son, one of her original parasols. She used to love these old kind of Asian style parasols. She actually picked up the habit when she was filming Night of the Iguana. I was talking to her son Matt about it.
Yeah.
And just ever since then, she bought up as many as she could. And I actually have one of her original ones.
Oh, wow.
And along with it, as part of the certificate of authenticity, he included an original canceled check that she had written somebody,
No kidding.
signed with her actual real name, Shirley Grossman.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. Wow. That's a
Yeah.
rarity. That's just
Yeah.
like such a unique thing to have. Wow.
Yeah.
I had, by the time this airs, this episode will have aired, but I had Steve Shutt and RJ Jameson on, who wrote Grayson's biography. And she had, as she was talking, she pulled out a pair of gloves and started wringing the gloves. And they were actually Grayson's gloves that she got. I was like, oh my God, that's so cool.
I can just picture her pulling them off.
Yes. Finger by finger. Yeah.
Yeah. That
Do you have any Thayer David signed stuff?
Thayer is one that I don't have. I wish I had, but I don't have.
Yeah.
Along the years, some of the actors wrote biographies and different autobiographies, along with fictional books as well.
Mhm.
That all kind of really started with Joan Bennett with the Bennett Playbill,
Yes.
which she had a hand in putting together. I actually have this copy is signed by her. She gave it to a good friend of hers.
Oh, look at that.
So that it's hard to tell, but
Yeah.
wrote Eric, so very nice to know you because you are too, Joan. So I've got a couple of her autographs, but I like this
Yeah.
one because
Yeah.
it's just Joan signed. It's not Joan Bennett. It wasn't like a formal.
Right. That's so cool. Yeah, it was like a personal inscription. I have her autograph too. I wrote when I was in 6th grade. My 6th grade teacher, he had a project where he'd have students write to famous people because he collected autographs. So you would ask, it was like you'd learn to write a letter to someone, but you would ask for 2 autographs. One was for his collection and one is for your collection. So I wrote to Joan Bennett and I got her autograph when I was in 6th grade. So I have that still. Yeah.
Yeah, she passed away when I was very young, so I never had a chance to meet her. I've been like I said, I've been a fan since I was a little kid, but I didn't start attending the festivals until 2012. That was my first fest. Before then, it just didn't work out or wasn't financially feasible at the time, or I was too young. So it was a shame though, because I was looking forward to meeting Jonathan Frid.
Yeah.
And it was going to be my first fest, and it was in June of 2012, and he passed away April 14th.
Yeah.
So I never got a chance to meet him. He was one of my heroes ever since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
And it's a shame, but I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Never got the chance. I went to 2 festivals, and I believe he was at both, but I didn't meet him at the festival. I didn't go to the autograph lines. I met him out at one of his one-man shows that he did at Brown University. This was, I think it was 90 or 91, and he performed up this way at Brown University. I got to meet him, and I gave him 2 as a gift, like 2 Shakespeare plays that were illustrated, and my mom helped me put a ribbon on it and everything. And he was so charming and so sweet, when I got to meet him. So that was the one time I got to meet Jonathan Frid. But there are a lot of the actors I haven't met. I interviewed David Selby for this podcast, but I never got to meet him in person.
He's a really nice guy. He was, I've met him a couple of times. He was very nice to my grandma when he met her.
Yeah.
They chatted for a little bit. Laura.
Oh yeah.
Laura was always one of my grandma's favorites. I brought her to the festival, and at the time, a lot of the actors would come around the tables to take pictures with the fans and everything. But at the time, Laura wasn't doing that. You had to go behind the table to get a picture with her. And my grandma in her chair couldn't get back there, and it stunk because she was like the main person that my grandma was there to see. She loved Laura, but later on in the lobby, I had met and talked to Laura multiple times over the years. So Laura was sitting there talking to, I think she was with her husband Jim at the time, and we just waited a little lull in their conversation. My grandma asked her if she can get a picture with her, so she finally got a picture with Laura.
Oh, that's great. I'm glad she got to do that.
Yeah, she was so excited about that.
Yeah.
But it's weird because growing up as a kid, you watch the show on TV, and you never really think, down the road you're going to get to know some of the actors from the show. And I've actually become good friends with a couple of the actors, and I've gotten to the point, I've been thanked in a couple of different Dark Shadows productions, like the Remembering Jonathan Frid book, and the the Master of Collinwood DVD release. Because I had a one-of-a-kind commercial. It was an original 16mm 1-minute commercial of promoting the show.
Oh wow.
And it's the only known footage of Alexandra's Vicky running across the lawn of Collinwood.
Oh, okay, yeah.
There's a lot of still image. There's tons of still images of it that have been used over the years for different promotional items, but there was never the actual film footage.
Yeah.
And the one day I have a saved search on eBay for everything Dark Shadows, and one day a bunch of little tiny reels between 30-second and 1 minute long popped up on there, just in the description, in the list of the description, just said Dark Shadows.
Yeah.
So it was like $20-25 for the whole lot. So I just bought the whole thing, and not even knowing what I was getting. And I got it, and I opened it up, and I'm holding it up to the light and everything, and I see Alexandra running across the lawn, and immediately I knew that I had something special.
Yeah, big time. Wow.
So I contacted Jim Pearson, and we were talking about it, and he offered to pay to ship it to him overnight in California, to have it digitally converted and cleaned up and everything. And he wound up using it in the Master of Dark Shadows documentary about Dan Curtis. Twice, actually. There's a couple clips of it in the documentary itself, and in the bonus feature they had the full commercial.
Yeah. It's great that you shared it, because some fans, I've encountered not in Dark Shadows fandoms, but in other fandoms, where they'll get something like that and they'll sit on it, like they won't share it, which that makes me really sad, because part of the joy for me is sharing something like that.
Unfortunately, I never got the actual film back.
Hey Jim, if you're listening, Jeff needs that back.
He knows. We emailed back and forth many times over the years, and it is what it is at this point.
Yeah.
He sent me a DVD of it when he had it converted, but I never got the original reel back.
Oh, that's not cool. I guess it's like that's yours. You bought that, you know.
It's been a good 5 years now.
Yeah, you gotta get on his case again about that. It's amazing that things like that turn up, which gives me hope that more stuff, like just within the year that I did this podcast, I'm sure you saw, Rob Sacconi, who I will forever be grateful for, reached out to me, and it turned out his uncle was a cameraman on Dark Shadows, and he said, "Oh, I have these pictures that he took. Are you interested in them?" I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." So I put them up on the blog, and they were these rare never before seen production photos during that he took pictures of during that last year of the show, which is really amazing that exists. And it gives me hope that things like, one thing I'd love to find is the Jonathan Frid on Bozo the Clown. Like, he was on a couple of Bozos, I think, a couple of different shows, local shows, when he was doing those promotional tours, and there are pictures of him with Bozo the Clown. And they're so, like, they even show up in just memes online all the time and stuff. And like, I'd love somewhere that footage might exist, because I found, was hosting my horror movie show here in Massachusetts. There was a horror host in the early 70s named Simon. He hosted Simon Sanctorum. And I found out, that he was on out of Channel 5 here in the early 70s. And I called the station and said, "Oh, we don't have any of that we don't have any of that footage." But I started putting out the feelers, and I found his wife, his widow. He passed away, sadly, but she runs a theater up in New Hampshire. And she said, "Oh yeah, I have some old tapes in the attic." And she brought, I asked if I could borrow them. She said, "Sure." So there were, 3 3/4 inch tapes, and she let me borrow them. I got them transferred, and there was Simon. She had him in the tape in the attic, and then she told me about the producer of the show, who had more footage in his basement. So it's just,
Nice.
contacting the right people sometimes, like a family member of the person who played Bozo, maybe they have some tapes.
Well, I only know the one appearance. There's a bunch of different pictures from the appearance. It was in Flint, Michigan.
Yes.
Was the one that he was on. And but I only know of the one appearance. All the pictures that are out there, I'm pretty sure, are just from the one show.
Okay. I was talking to Mary O'Leary. She sent me like a list of some of those appearing. I got to look at, maybe it was just the one Bozo and one other like TV local show, that kids show or something that he did. Just cutting in here, I double checked the information from Mary O'Leary, and during the 5-day 10-city tour, Jonathan Frid was just on one Bozo show in Flint, Michigan on WJRT TV on May 23rd, 1968. And then he was on another children's show, Claire and Coco, in Washington, D.C. at WMAL TV on May 24th, 1968.
I also co-admin the official Jonathan Frid fan group on Facebook with Nancy Kersey. And what is funny, I never met the man, but I know so much about him. But I admin a bunch of groups on Facebook. I started the collectors group just because I wanted to give fans a place to share their collection, buy and sell different items, and just kind of its own little its own little niche of Facebook, just to give people that place. Facebook has their marketplace section on there, but nobody really searches that for Dark Shadows stuff. But I wanted to give just its own place, just to buy and sell, or just to show off items of your collection on there. But I also, for the last 11 years now, I've been almost 12, one of the main admins of another group called Dark Shadows for All on Facebook. And I co-admin a bunch of other groups. I know Facebook adminning very well, so a lot of people always ask me to help them out with their groups. Like just recently, I became an admin of another large group, that Dark Shadows, the Old House. That it's just that one. Biggest issue with a lot of Facebook groups are like the fake accounts and the spam, and all that, people trying to scam people. So I've become very good at weeding all those people out. Like when I joined that last group, the Old House, as the admin, I went through the follower list on there, just went on a massive deleting spree of all the obviously fake accounts. I probably knocked off a good 300 or 400 people.
Wow, that's a lot.
Well, because the group itself has somewhere, I think, just over 13,000 members. and it was getting a little too overwhelming for the other admin. So
Right.
I stepped in and I set up some parameters to make it a lot harder for the fake accounts to join.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's great. And there's some great Facebook groups. There, with regard to the Dark Shadows Collector group, there's so many great pictures and things that I see people post on there, things that are just really unique and fun, like fan made items too. You see show up on there, like your Pez dispenser, things like that are really fun to see. I have some custom stuff back here that I've posted pictures of too. It's fun to get some unique items like that. But there's one official item that's is also super rare that I have not ever seen in person, and that's the watch. It was the Edward Roberts and Company watch. I have the poster that was Wallace McBride did that for Unlovely Frankenstein, but that artwork from that vintage poster was on that watch. Like, have you ever seen that, or is it? Do you know anybody who's had that?
That I know someone who's had it. I never got one myself. My friend that made all the reproduction stuff, he also made a bunch of Dark Shadows watches as well, including with that artwork and all that. But he always made sure to mark on there that they were reproductions. That and there occasionally some of the stuff will pop up on eBay and people trying to sell it as the real thing when it's very clearly not.
Yeah.
But the watch itself, I actually had that original poster of that.
Oh, cool.
The glow in the dark poster.
Yeah.
But I've never had the watch itself. I wish, but there are just some items that have just eluded me over the years.
That one is tough. That's a very rare item too. That one's up there in terms of like the scarcity for something. Yeah.
The original Barnabas rings that they released back in the 60s, there were two different versions of them, of the onyx ring. There's one that had an ornate band, one that had a plain band. I had the plain band version. The ornate one goes for even more. You could probably, for even just a plain band version, you could probably get anywhere between $700 and $800 for.
Wow.
The ornate one I've seen sell for at least $1,000.
Whoa.
That over the years, the MPI released a version of the ring, and then back around 2012 when the Johnny Depp Tim Burton movie came out, there was a whole big push for new Dark Shadows merchandise, and actually the coffin set was part of that. And was it the
lunchbox?
No, I'm trying to think. It was a Lope. Yeah, it was the Lope that did it. They did a costume set. They made. They did the cape. They did a wig, the cane, the ring,
fangs,
and the fangs. The cane looked cool for pictures, but it was just very cheap, lightweight plastic kind of Halloween costume.
Yep.
I mean, it wasn't all the highest quality, but it was some cool stuff. But the ring itself, even that little ring, which sold originally for about $10, is selling for 5-6 times that now, sometimes even more.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I have some of those eloped. I have the fangs and the wig back here and in the display. I didn't pick up the rest. I have the repro ring from MPI in the little case. I've seen the original one on eBay once in a great while, and then, like you said, I mean, that goes for big bucks. The original Barnabas ring for sure, and Josette's music box too. That one goes for a lot too.
Oh yeah, that especially the original version, which I had Catherine sign the cardboard outer box for it last year.
Oh, very cool. Yeah.
And because I was with her in Essex, Connecticut. It was her very first time visiting Essex. She did not take part in any of the early on location filming for the show in either Essex, Connecticut or Newport, Rhode Island. And it's funny, I asked her, because she was in those early episodes from the very beginning.
Sure.
But she did not take part in any of the filming, and she has no idea why to this day that she was never asked to do it. So she had never visited her character's home or work. She had never been to the cottage or to the Collinsport Inn.
Yeah.
So I had the privilege of giving her a tour of some of those locations.
Oh, that's really cool.
Because besides collecting Dark Shadows items, I'm also the filming locations that what I love. I love on my personal Facebook page and in my Dark Shadows for All group, I have photo albums on there. I like to do a lot of the then and now photography. I'll take still images from the show or the movies or promotional images and, you know, do the now version of the picture. Because I visited, with the exception of Greystone Mansion in California, basically every Dark Shadows filming location.
Oh, great. Yeah.
On the East Coast. That I haven't been to any of the 91 series ones. But that's what I love to collect are, you know, the images. I've always been a filming location nerd. I love, even around Chicago here, like I do a lot of the John Hughes movies, and I love, you know, going to all those filming locations. But it was nice being able to take Catherine to you know, the Evans Cottage and the Collinsport Inn. We went to the Collinsport Jail, the police station, which was the Essex, Connecticut post office, and we even took her behind the Evans Cottage. There's actually a big cemetery back there, a very old cemetery, and directly behind the cottage there are a couple of graves that are it was Barnabas Bates was the name's on the grave, and they're very old graves. It's not if I remember right, the story behind how they came up with the name for Barnabas was a different cemetery, but I always just found it very coincidental that right behind the Evans Cottage, because the cottage literally backs right up to the cemetery, are a couple of graves marked Barnabas. You know, for the man and his son, and we actually got a couple of pictures of Catherine standing with the Barnabas graves. That was really cool.
That's great. A friend of mine wrote an article about, he does a show, Tim Weisberg does a show called Spooky South Coast, and he did an article speculating that it was a grave in Dartmouth, Massachusetts, but I didn't think they went over to, they were in Newport and in Connecticut, but I don't think they came down to Dartmouth, but Robert Costello, but I don't know, you know, it's,
you know, by the time Jonathan Frid actually joined the show and they came up with the whole character of Barnabas, they were slowly phasing out the filming locations. Most of the stuff had already been done already throughout early 1966. Most of which even before the show even started, they went on location like the Seaview Terrace in Newport, and filmed all those promotional shots with Alexandra Molka, Vicky, and David Hennessy and Louis Edmonds in and around the property, and on the beach behind. There's a lot of famous images that were taken around there. You know, actually, I there's one thing that I do know that I was the first person to discover location wise was the actual location of Widow's Hill. There were a lot of people who speculated on which cliff it was over the years. So there were 3 different locations used for Widow's Hill. There's the shot from the side of Vicky standing on top of it. There's the shot looking down at the rocks below, and the shot looking up when you see Vicky, and then Roger walks up behind her. Those were 3 different locations that they used. The only one I haven't been able to find is the location looking down.
Right, that would be tough. Yeah.
You know, it was all filmed along the cliff walk in Newport, Rhode Island. And there's like the one shot of the dead Bill Malloy laying on the rocks down below. That shot I've not been able to figure out because there's a lot of cliffs. And back in the 80s, the Army Corps of Engineers worked with Newport to redo a lot of the coastline and shore it all up against erosion. So the cliff that they used for the side view of Widow's Hill, it looks pretty different nowadays. There's these giant boulders on each side that weren't there back in the 60s. But even before I went to Newport for the first time, I was comparing, I was looking at images all along the coastline and the cliff walk every image I could find online of the cliff walk, and trying to look at every cliff and match them up with pictures from the show.
Wow.
I found the one that I figured out was it. And when I went to Newport for the first time, it was very clearly, it was that cliff. I lined up every crevice, little nook and cranny that I could.
That's amazing that you did that. I'd love to. I've been on the cliff walk several times, but I wasn't ever sure like which was the specific one. So I'd love to see that if I'm up there. If you've got downtown, I'd love to see that one. Did you find there are a couple I'm curious about if you've ever figured out what The still image they used for Eagle Hill Cemetery. Any idea of which one that is?
So I I have a feeling that part of it was parts of Sleepy Hollow.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Because I mean, they were there at the time. They were in the area for some early filming, even for the show. Because
Uh-huh.
those first couple episodes of the show, they did some filming at Lyndhurst, which
Mhm.
is right down from Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah.
The stable area of Lyndhurst was used as the garages for and the original exterior of Matthew Morgan's cottage on the
Okay.
show.
Yeah.
Vicky walks up to the cottage and then she's coming out. She sees Burke messing with
Yeah,
Roger.
that was the other one I was going to ask. It was
Yeah.
Matthew Morgan's cottage. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. That's all part of the stable complex at Lyndhurst. And then whenever you see them driving on the show, that's all the roads at Lyndhurst. And actually, while they were filming that stuff, that's how Dan Curtis discovered the old house. If it wasn't for Dan Curtis deciding to take a smoke break and walk through the woods, he came across some old abandoned mansion buried in the woods, and that's what they wound up using as the old house on the show.
Yeah.
He found a way to write that into the series, and just by chance, him taking a smoke break, that created one of the biggest storylines on the show, and became the houses themselves are characters.
Yes.
I mean,
for sure.
Seaview Terrace's Collinwood appeared in literally all 1,225 episodes of the show.
Yeah.
More than any actor on the show, more than anybody. So I think that's part of another reason why I got the tattoo, because I mean, the house itself is the main character of the series.
For sure. Oh, it's
Yeah.
iconic. And I think I thought that was a kind of a miss in the 91 series, was that the house, it was too almost generic looking compared. Seaview has such character to it. It's just so, you take instant recognition. It's like that house is just very striking, I'm not saying Greystone is a beautiful house, but it's just doesn't have that look to it, which is why I'm glad in the 2012 film, they did actually, the house that they used for that did look like it had that vibe to it anyway. So it was not exact, but it was evocative, the exterior with the tower and all of that.
Because that house didn't actually, the one for the 2012 movie didn't actually exist.
Yeah.
They built the set as the first level, and then they had a 1/3 scale miniature of the house that they used for most of the shots of the house that you see in the movie are of the miniature. And I actually have in my collection the front doors for that miniature.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah, they're about 2.5 feet tall, and they're based on the actual full-size doors. But if you look at pictures of the actual, I use the word miniature very loosely, because I mean, the thing is 33, the whole model is 33 feet tall.
Whoa.
And you see like full-grown men walking in front of it, and it's good size. But yeah, I've got the actual doors from that model, thankfully, because in the movie the house burns,
right?
But for some reason those doors didn't burn or weren't on the model. But they're clearly the doors. They've got the knockers on them. And
how did you get that shipped to you? The doors? I mean,
it actually came from London. There's a company called Prop Store. They deal in a lot of original movie and TV show props and everything. And they've had a bunch of the props and stuff from the 2012 movie.
I see.
They had his coffin in there, and they had his cane.
Wow.
Those went up for auction, but they also have items that they just sell outright as well.
Yeah.
And they had the doors for sale on there, so weren't that cheap, but it's one of the most expensive parts of my collection. But I've got the actual doors.
Wow.
They're put away right now because I'm working on making a nice shadow box display for them.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Is there any, there are things I would love to see made in terms of like official Dark Shadows merchandise. I know they did, Spectre Toys did the Amigo style figures, and Majestic Studios did the 12-inch figures. And
which you have behind you there.
I do have them, yeah. And those are going for big bucks now too. I'm like, that was not even that old, but they're going for big bucks. I like the 1795 Majestic Barnabas. I'd like to see, I don't know why Spectre Toys gave Barnabas a brown cloak. I always thought that was kind of an odd, it's like, I probably should be black, but I'd love to see new Dark Shadows figures made. That's like any kind, like I've tried to pitch to Super 7 because I do some work for them, to do like reaction Dark Shadows like they did with the Universal Monsters and a lot of other things. And Amigo, I would love to see them do it. I'd love to see NECA do like Ultimate Dark Shadow. I mean, I doubt that will happen, but it would be great to see more of that.
There are
More
a couple companies that do limited run stuff, like Brent's Toys.
Yeah, oh, he's great.
Or Brent's
Yeah.
Dolls.
Brent's Dolls, yeah.
He made a Barnabas for somebody one time. There's a picture on the site. It looks very much like the Spectre Mego style.
It does, yeah.
But I'm sure he'd be able to make more, but they'd all be very limited run kind of stuff. There was another guy, the Clay guy.
Oh yes,
a lot of conventions and stuff. He makes little clay models. He's got Barnabas, Quentin, Angelique, Julia.
Yeah,
I think he does a Josette as well.
Yeah,
he never has the Barnabas ones anymore. I see him at a bunch of the kind of horror conventions that I go to, and he hasn't made a Barnabas one in a long time.
Yeah.
But I think Brent's Dolls would be a good one to make.
Yeah, I would like to see more. Just there's so much stuff that they like. They've never done. Like Julia's amulet, you know, the hip to hypnotize. That would be fun. Like I could see MPI doing something like that. But you know, I see things for like, oh, I'm like, oh, there's a whatever Doctor Who pinball machine or Star Trek pinball machine. I'd love to see. Even though I'm not a pinball fan, a friend of mine is a huge pinball fanatic. Like, oh, Dark Shadows pinball machine would be really fun to see something like that. Just I don't know, stuff that's they did the Viewmaster reels back in the day, but just fun kind of new versions of things like that would be really fun.
You know, MPI for a long time they would slap Dark Shadows on everything.
Yeah.
I had Dark Shadows boxers, underwear.
Yes. Yep.
I mean, they made all kinds of stuff, but nowadays it would take another kind of major release of something Dark Shadows, like if the Dark Shadows reincarnation ever comes to fruition, the new series that Mark is working on. There'll probably be a push for some more items then. You know, like around 2012 when the Debt movie came out, we got a lot of new merchandise around then.
Sure.
Mostly related to the original series. I mean, that's the coffin. That's what kind of inspired the coffin set.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, Warner Brothers finally released the House and Night of Dark Shadows on DVD and Blu-ray.
Yeah, I'd love to see the restored version of the Night of Dark Shadows released. That would be great.
You know, it's mostly done. I've talked to Darren Gross about it. It's essentially done. Mm-hmm. Just Warner Brothers has no interest in putting it out.
Yeah, you know, it sucks. I mean, it's there. It's like, why? Like with something like Shudder, for example, like they have all these streaming channels. Shudder would be a good like Halloween premiere of the full version of Night of Dark Shadows exclusively on Shudder. Like what? Why not? What do they have to lose by doing that? I mean, it would be just really cool to. I have to get Darren on here at some point to chat. I've been saying that for like a year. I got to get there. I got to reach. I'm friends with him on Facebook. I just have to reach out to him.
He's a really good guy, and you know. He used to run the Night of Dark Shadows restoration website.
Yes,
any updates he had. I remember when he finally found that full version of the movie without audio. That was like huge news at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, at this point, all you really need is just a sound alike for Grayson. To come in and do it.
I think that I had Ansel Farage on here. I think that's already squared away. I think that's already, they already got that. So it's just a matter of, I hope somebody picks it up. Another thing I'd like to see, I had Stephen D. Sullivan on here, and we talked about the Dark Shadows role-playing game, because he worked at TSR, and that would be fun. They've done role-playing games for all of this other stuff. Like, why not a Dark Shadows one? You know, that would be, I mean, is there any merchandise that you would like to see made, like sort of something that doesn't exist, or that you'd like to see made or reissued from the past, or anything like that?
You know, they've released so much stuff with Dark Shadows over the years. The one cool thing that would have been done, which I'm surprised they didn't do kind of back in the day, like a Dark Shadows video game.
Yes,
You know, even like in the 80s when they were putting out any kind of Nintendo or Atari games that tie in with any of, I mean, they did one for Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, any kind of title. The games weren't always the best, but it would have been cool to have something like that.
They even did an Uncle Fester video game. I remember Fester's Quest. I'm not a big video game, but I played Atari when I was a kid, and Nintendo too. I think my sister had like a Super Nintendo. I played that a little bit, but I would be down if they ever made like a whatever PlayStation Dark Shadows
Yeah.
game or whatever, I would go buy a PlayStation just to play that Dark Shadows game. I would be all in for that. One of those, like those Arkham Asylum Batman games where he goes all over. Like, can you imagine, like in Collinsport, and there's all these supernatural things going on? I mean,
What would be nice, more of those figures though, like from a company like Hot Toys,
oh yeah,
like to do those high-end
those are
kind of
amazing. Yeah.
those large kind of figures. I think they could really do them justice. They're not the cheapest in the world, but I think they could really make really nice figures.
They would definitely nail the likeness. Like a lot, I think for some reason, some of the figures, the likenesses are not entirely. There's something weird about them or something. But it's something like Hot Toys would be. They probably just nail it completely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, that would be cool. Something like that. I would love to have just kind of a really nice, tall, solid figure.
One thing we forgot to mention were the MPC model kits, which were released in the 60s and then reissued at least a couple of times since then. And new model kits of different characters would also be really fun.
I mean, the older ones, or the kind of Nego style ones, or I mean, they're all cool and everything. And Spectre, they had that second line that they were going to be doing, but they went out of business.
So sad.
Those would be holy grail. Would be the prototypes of those figures that they made, because they did the Quentin, the Josette, and the Willie.
Yeah, and Adam too.
Well, yeah, Adam. They did the one. Yeah.
I wrote to Rick Fairs at around that time, and he wrote back to me and he said, "Oh, I'm also planning a Collinwood playset for the figures. Can you imagine? That would have been amazing. I'm sure it probably would have been like one of those Mego, vinyl or whatever."
I would have taken it. I would love something like that. It's another thing that I want to do. There have been people that have made like large scale replicas of Collinwood, of Seaview Terrace, like models of them.
Yes, yeah, those would be cool to have. Yeah.
Down the road sometime, being the Lego nerd that I am, I would love to make a Lego reproduction of Collinwood,
yes.
the old house. That it wouldn't be the cheapest thing in the world to do, because buying all those pieces can really add up, but it would be really cool.
That would be amazing. You should totally do that someday if you bring it to Seaview and display it.
There's a home in Pennsylvania. The guy who built it, a giant home is understatement. It's a big mansion, really heavily inspired by Seaview. That there was that one news piece several years ago, and he wound up adding a whole other part onto the house since then.
Really?
Yeah, I know it was for sale within the last couple of years, but I looked recently and it's off the market now. But it's so nice, and it's very heavily inspired by Seaview Terrace.
Have you been there in person?
I'm not in person, but when it was for sale on the realtor's website, they had a virtual walkthrough of the entire house.
Yep.
And so I literally spent hours just going through this entire house. He had his one dining room is heavily inspired by the dining room at Lyndhurst. The one kind of foyer area he designed to look like the foyer set of Collinwood. He was obviously a very big Dark Shadows fan.
Yeah, for sure.
His one living room, there's a painting of himself on the wall dressed up like Barnabas Collins.
This house is amazing. I mean, I saw the news. For those who are listening haven't seen, it's a Dark Shadows fan, and he has a mansion that looks like, I mean, he really went all out with it looks like Seaview Terrace. I mean, it's amazing. It's a little, is it small? It must be smaller than Seaview, I would imagine. No, or
it's technically smaller. I mean, Seaview is the 5th largest mansion in all of New England, and the largest private residence in New England.
Yeah.
Because the other mansions in Newport are all owned by the Preservation Society or privately owned. But Seaview is privately owned. But it is the largest private residence.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. And it's, I mean, something like the Newport Preservation Society, maybe they would intervene in terms of, as we know, the house is for sale. And it would be really tragic if they tore it down or just you know, changed it in some way, or just having it restored as one of the Newport mansions would be, and I think a better situation versus the alternative, you know.
Yeah, it's just actually, it's technically off of the market right now.
Mhm.
Denise, the owner, had to take it off because HBO was in Newport. They were just in there recently, and they're going to be back in September. They're working on the second season of their show, The Gilded Age,
Okay.
and they're not doing any filming at Seaview, but they're using the house as the base camp and production and all that, and makeup and wardrobe and
I see.
all that. And so they're going to be there like 6 weeks at a time, and she doesn't want to take the chance of it selling while she has the contract with HBO. So it's probably going to wind up going back on the market towards the end of the year.
I see. Yeah, it's I hope, let's keep our fingers crossed for the best for all parties involved. One other question I had that sprang to mind. A lot of people ask me about the portraits on the show, and I know the original Barnabas portrait was stolen during the actual production of the show, but and then they replaced it with a replica or a different version. It's like, if you look at it, you can see that it's certainly not exactly the same. Do you know who painted those paintings, and are there any of the other ones that survived from the show? Like, I think the old Quentin is.
So I actually a couple of years ago had the chance to buy the old Quentin. So there was only ever the one Quentin painting done. They just added the old age kind of makeup onto the original. Yeah.
I wondered about that. Like, I wondered if the original one was somewhere. Okay, so they just aged the original. Oh, I see.
You know, and most of them are all just painted by ABC's. They're kind of artists that they had on staff. Like on the back of the actual paintings, it's got, I think it's the ABC Scenic Union stamp on them. But I mean, they weren't really done by anybody of note that I know of. Yeah, the original one was stolen. There was the reproduction one that they made, which was introduced first after the 1995 storyline on the show. That's when it appeared, because they had taken it off of the wall for the 1970 parallel time, and kind of while they were filming House of Dark Shadows. And actually, there was a version for House of Dark Shadows as well, which sold, I think it was at a festival some years back, sold for like $13,000. The one from the movie, which was actually significantly larger than the ones used on the show. It was a large painting.
Wow.
And Lyndhurst actually has a copy of the House of Dark Shadows Barnabas painting, along with Laura Parker has her actual Angelique painting from Night of Dark Shadows.
Yeah.
And she sells prints of that as well, canvas prints of it, really nice ones. And one of them was made for Lyndhurst. So at certain events, Lyndhurst will bring out their Dark Shadows portraits.
Oh, great.
But and then, you know, some of them were sold at between the original series and the 91 series. Some were sold at festivals over the years, but most of them aren't really, their whereabouts are not known
right
after all these years.
There were so many. I mean, dark portraits were such a mainstay on Dark Shadows. I mean, there were so many of them that would turn up, and it's just, who knows where some of those are. Like the original Angelique painting from the first one that was kind of, she was tethered to in some way, and then there's the parallel time one, which is similar to the Night of Dark Shadows, the pose, but it's different. She has the white dress and the gloves and everything.
I mean, so I think for the Night of Dark Shadows ones, they just used because they had Laura Parker do a photo shoot for the painting for the 1970 parallel time, and they used the photo to paint the painting. And if you look at that one and the Night of Dark Shadows one, it's just a different dress and a slightly different background.
So they repainted it probably.
Yeah, I don't know if they painted over or they made an mostly exact duplicate of it, just with a different dress. But it's clearly based on the one from 1970 parallel time. But yeah, the 1795 painting, you know, it'd be nice to know where a lot of these went to. I know for a while, after the storyline, in the lobby of the studio, they had the Phoenix painting, the Laura painting hanging up in the lobby.
Yeah.
There's several fan taken pictures from inside the lobby of it hanging up on the wall there.
Yeah.
But afterwards, I have no idea what happened to it. Actually, inside of Seaview Terrace, there's replicas of some of the paintings from the show. There's the Barnabas painting,
Mhm.
and then there's a really nice copy of the Laura, the Phoenix painting
Yeah.
that we have there.
There's a Josette one too.
Yeah, the Josette one's nice, but the that one was just kind of made later. But the Laura, the Phoenix one was actually taken from an actual high quality photograph of the original painting
Oh, nice.
and made into a large canvas print.
Yeah, and it was when I was there, it was in the fireplace, which I
Yeah.
love. That's where it
Yeah.
was displayed. That was great.
Yeah, guy always puts it in the fireplace there.
Yes.
But it's nice though. The Barnabas painting hangs at Seaview in the dining room year round.
Yeah.
There, it's nice that the owners of the house they've embraced its history with Dark Shadows, and you know, there have been a couple fan films that were actually filmed at Seaview Terrace, and Denise Carey, the owner of the house, she actually participated and played characters in them.
Yes, and her late dog Rodolfo. That's why I always call the dog in the puzzle Rodolfo.
Yeah, I loved Rodolfo. He was such a big, nice. As long as he knew that you were allowed to be on the property, you were fine. But if he had an idea that you weren't supposed to be there, he wouldn't attack you, but he would knock you down. And he was a big dog.
Yeah,
he was a Neapolitan Mastiff. I mean, he was gigantic.
Yeah. Jeff, has knowing, you've gotten to know a lot of the actors over the years from participating in the fandom, has that affected your perception of the show when you watch it? Like, are you still able to like watch the show as a fan and enjoy it as a story onto itself?
No, definitely. That I've always been able to separate them, and I'm actually currently making my way through the series for the fourth time.
Wow,
those
awesome.
1,225 episodes take a while to go through.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've watched certain storylines and different things multiple times, but actually going through the series, I'm almost done with my fourth time through. And I mean, some of the actors that I've got to know pretty well, I mean, when I watch it, I do kind of see them, I picture them now, but I mean, for the most part, they'll always be their characters for me. I mean, Catherine will always be Maggie and Josette, and Chris, even seeing his characters on the show and knowing the man personally, that there's definitely a lot of Chris in his characters.
Yeah.
Just that kind of out there kind of, I don't want to use the term crazy, but definitely out
Bananas
there.
energy. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of that, a lot of his characters that, people like Sharon Smith, Sharon
She's
Smith
so sweet.
now,
Yeah.
she's so nice.
Yeah.
I really wish she could have been given more to do on the show.
Yeah.
That's another thing I have. Sharon has, she has copies of the letter that she received from Dan Gertis Productions, essentially firing her from the show, saying they didn't need her anymore. So she sells reproductions.
I have her. I met her at Coast City Comic Con. I was doing an appearance as Penny Dreadful, and I usually don't get like butterflies when I'm going to meet guests, because I've just met a lot of celebrities just sitting at tables and stuff and chit chatting. But Dark Shadows people, I'm always like, oh my God, Sharon Smith is going to be there. So she was the sweetest person. And I got you have it back there. I don't know if you can see it hanging on there. I have the little Sarah Collins bag. Yeah, she has little bags with Sarah artwork on them. She's so nice. I have to get her on here at some point. I know she's been through a lot lately, but
actually the very first, with her husband.
Yeah.
A lot of issues. Yeah. But the very first actor I ever met was Denise Nickerson.
Oh, wow.
Back around 2010. It was before I started doing the festival. She was the first actor from Dark Shadows that I ever met. And I go to a lot of conventions, so I've met a lot of actors and musicians and all kinds of stuff over the years. But talking to her, they had kind of positioned her and Terrence Thiemann, the guy, he played Mike TV in Willy Wonka.
Okay.
With her. They just had them stuck at tables in the back of the convention center, and they were kind of just sitting there. It was the year later, they did a big Wonka Kid reunion there where they had them all there. But at this one, they just had Denise and Paris. I spent a good 45 minutes or an hour talking to Denise. and she was so nice. It was just
Yeah.
a tiny little thing. She was, I mean, she never really got much taller than she was when she was on the show. Like when I took my picture with her, I'm a tall guy. I had to lean down and
uh, she
take it
was a
with me.
real spitfire too, just from the
Yeah.
interviews I see with her and things like that. Oh, that's so cool. You got to meet her.
And it was before she started getting sick. I mean, the
Yeah.
last couple of years of her life, I mean, she went through a very rough patch and all that. And
Yeah.
but it was probably just a couple of years before, because she was on Facebook for a while. She talked to a lot of people. She was very active with the fans,
Mm.
like what Sharon is. Denise was like the same way.
Yeah.
Um, but then just one day she disappeared,
Yeah.
and she like unfriended everybody. And
Oh, that's
I think it was right around the time she started getting ill.
yeah.
But it's sad because she's never really going to get a chance to know her grandchild that
Yeah.
was born. But she was a very nice lady.
Yeah.
That I after meeting her at the convention, she friended me on Facebook, and we used to talk regularly
Oh,
on there. And she was kind of that my way into meeting the Dark Shadows actors and all that. It kind of all started with her,
yeah.
and
Oh,
yeah, it was really nice.
yeah. Well, it's great you got to have that experience of getting to
Yeah,
know her, though. I'm glad to see, David Hennessy has been participating more in
yeah.
events, like online stuff. Like he's been part of those last couple of things they did. So that's pretty cool that he's been more into it lately, I guess.
Part of his restaurant business, he occasionally comes to Chicago for reason. And I never know that he was in Chicago until after, where
Uh,
he posts pictures. There
yeah.
was like, man, I wish I would have known that he was here. And I know he's very nice with fans. If you ever come down, I mean, if you're in Panama, and visit his restaurant, I mean, he has no problem talking to fans
Yeah,
that have
actually
input.
seems like super like in his video. He posts videos on his Instagram, and
Yeah,
some of them are pretty funny, and so he still has that
yeah,
performer side to him. Where you can
yeah.
definitely see that still coming out in him.
It was weird hearing his voice for the first time
He
at
has
the
a little bit
open.
of an accent, huh?
Yeah,
Like a
that
little
he
bit
spent
of a Spanish
all
lilt
these
to.
years all these years down there, that he's kind of picked that up. It
Yes.
was it was definitely different.
Yeah, I noticed that too, and I said he's definitely picked up a little bit of a. There's a little bit of like a Spanish lilt to
Yeah.
his voice for sure. Did you ever figure out? I'm just jumping back real quick to that to figuring out the locations, if it's okay. Did you ever figure out, like, they used a lot of like still images for things like Nicholas Blair's house or Dr. Lang's house? Did you ever track those down? Because those are so, because the backgrounds they used, they superimposed them over,
Yeah.
so it's like which house is that,
There's a couple of locations on the show that nobody's been able to find, because at the time the show just used stock images that they had in their library, like Nicholas Blair's house, Dr. Lane's house,
I see. Yeah.
and Wincliffe. And then there was that one of Seaview, the house by the sea, that Vicky and Burke were going to be moving into. Um,
Yes.
Bangor
Yeah.
Pines Motel or Hotel.
Right.
They were all just stock photos. It's been very hard. Like even the opening of the show with the waves crashing on the rocks. A lot of people think that they filmed that for in Newport when they were doing all their location filming. But I've actually tried to match up all those rocks with everything in Newport, and I cannot match them up. And Bob Costello in an early festival has said that it was just stock footage.
Oh, so it wasn't. I've always assumed it was Newport when they
But
filmed it.
Bob has also been wrong about some things, though,
I
too.
see.
He said the show never ran in syndication, which is
Oh.
not true. And I don't know. So it's hard to tell what's correct and what's not. But I mean, I did my best to try and match those rocks up.
Yeah.
There are the beach scenes, like Lookout Point on the show, where Matthew Malloy, Bill Malloy,
Yeah.
Matthew Morgan killed Bill Malloy.
Yeah.
That beach there, was actually directly behind the house, the beach behind the house there. But I've not, those still images, it's just nobody's been able to find. And believe me, I've been trying over the years, and it's just, there's a house in Kennebunkport, Maine, that people, like even locals there, say, oh, this was the house used on Dark Shadows. There's some from what I read online, a tour guide told them that that was the house used in the opening, and it's
Yeah.
clearly not. I mean,
Right.
you and I have both been to Seaview. We know what the house looks like.
Sure. Yeah.
But I've only been able to find 1 or 2 images of this house online. And the view that they use on the show was from the water. So it's been a hard time really matching up whether or not this house was actually used on the show.
Yeah.
It's possible that it may be one of them, but it would have to be a stock photo, because I doubt they would go that far north just to take a couple pictures of some houses.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I always forget about the stock. That's probably, that probably is what they just pulled from like ABC stock material, like the werewolf howl. Like I was talking about that in an earlier episode. Like where did the werewolf howl come from? It must be some stock audio that they had at ABC, because you hear that, or anywhere, or just in general for the use of the entertainment industry, because you hear that howl in other things. But then there's also the laugh, which I used to say, it sounds kind of, I don't, or I'm sorry, the scream. Was it the scream or the laugh? There's a horror record from like the early 60s, and there's a sound effect in that. Just interrupting myself real quick here. What I'm referring to is a scream that was used several times in Dark Shadows, most notably in the scene where Maggie Evans has a nightmare in which she sees herself dead in a coffin and then sees her own face as a skull screaming. That scream, I initially thought that was Catherine Lee Scott screaming. And there's a story where they hired an actress to scream and she didn't do a great job, so Catherine Lee Scott did it herself. But this particular scream is actually Alan Gallant wrote to me. He listens to the podcast, and I appreciate this. He sent in a message that said it was a sound effects library scream, which can be heard on the circa 1960 Halloween album Spooky Stuff for Halloween, and it's on side A of the album, and it is there. It is that scream that you can hear on that album. So it's just a sound effects library scream, and the Halloween record probably got it from the same place Dark Shadows did. It's probably some special effects sound library, and that's probably where the werewolf howl came from as well. I'm sure ABC had access to, and probably other studios had access to that. That comes. Sometimes these things turn up, and it's like, oh, somebody listens to the show, sent me a link to it, and said, oh, this is where the sound effect came from.
I wonder if that, because there's like that really loud laugh cackle that you kind of hear at one point on the show, that may have been stock. But I know that some of the screams that you hear, they actually had scream doubles on the show.
Yeah.
Like with Catherine screaming, she didn't really, you hear it in the background, it's obviously dubbed over. A lot of these actresses didn't do a lot of the really loud screaming. But I'm pretty sure from what I read, they just had they had other people kind of off screen or extras or somebody record the screams. But there were some that had to come from stock. And then even since then, there have been different sound effects and music cues that have become really popular. Like I was watching that show Tales from the Dark Side.
I remember that show. Yeah.
That and one of them was directed by Armand Monstrio. I'm trying to remember. He directed some of the 1991 revival series. I would always look for different Dark Shadows references. Like the first episode of Tales from the Dark Side had a Barnard Hughes in it, who had appeared on Dark Shadows, and they used a lot of kind of sound cues from the show, from Dark Shadows, and it was cool watching that and seeing just like random little things pop up. Or even Dan Curtis's movies that he made. Like if you watch Dracula is very Dan Curtis and Dark Shadows,
big time.
Between the music and all that, because he had Bob Colbert do all the music for them.
The music box, the theme that they have in it, and all of that. Very much so.
It's really cool with Dracula. That kind of started that whole trope of with Dracula trying to find his lost bride, and Mina being the reincarnation of.
Well, he pulled it right from Dark Shadows and put it in that.
He started that on Dark Shadows. He brought it into Dracula, and now
it's everywhere.
The Bram Stoker's Dracula with Gary Oldman.
Yep.
That was kind of one of the first ones to kind of bring that into their storyline using that. But even nowadays, like some of the modern vampire TV shows, or even there was that Dracula TV series.
Yes.
A couple of years ago. And they had that whole idea of Mina being the reincarnation of his former love.
Yeah.
And it's just cool that all that came from Dark Shadows.
There's so much that actually came from Dark Shadows that I feel it doesn't get enough. I gripe about this on the show sometimes because it's like it doesn't get acknowledged enough sometimes. I was watching this video by a popular YouTuber, and she was talking about vampires and the kind of the history of vampires, and she went right from Dracula to Anne Rice and so about sympathetic vampires and all of this kind of stuff. And it just was like, there's a big step there that you just skipped over. And I feel like I've talked about this before too. I feel like there's a gap after the show went off the air and went into syndication. It was in syndication, but I feel like it didn't hit enough markets that next generation, there's a cult following, but it's like, I wish there was a little more awareness of it so that that acknowledgement would be there. Like last October, there was, I think it was Time or Life released this big magazine, Vampires, about vampires. There's no Dark Shadows. It's like the whole thing. It was like, come on. Well, Dark Shadows was huge. It was a huge pop culture phenomenon. And Barnabas was a pivotal figure in the history of vampires and how they're depicted in media. And like you said, with the reincarnation of the lost love being applied to vampires and all of that. I mean, as we had that with the mummy, with the Karloff mummy, but this is the first time it was applied to vampires, and it has subsequently become this sort of trope that you see all the time.
Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of even the newer modern horror shows, like Supernatural.
Oh yeah.
And what was that one soap opera that kind of really delved into some supernatural elements?
Was it Passions?
Passions. The creators of those series always acknowledged Dark Shadows as being an inspiration for them. I wish there was more awareness.
American Horror Story. The guy that wrote showrunner on that, he's a Dark Shadows fan, and using the cast members as different characters, and he had a Barnabas Kane. Yeah. Show up in one episode. Yeah. So it's nice when there is that nod, but it's like when you see like something presented as like, oh, here's a history of this topic, and it's like you got to do a little more research if you're not familiar with it, because that component is essential. Like that kind of gets under my skin a little bit sometimes. I'd like to see more. And I think what, like you mentioned, with something like if reincarnation happens, which I hope it does, because I know Mark is really pushing hard for that, I think we would see more awareness of the original show and more merchandise, more collectibles that would come out for the original show. Because MPI, I mean, there are other companies that have gotten the license to do so, but MPI is sort of the mainstay where they keep putting out Dark Shadows stuff. But it's like, I'd like to see more variety in items from different companies in addition to MPI as well. You know?
Yeah, that would be really nice. Yeah, they still occasionally put some stuff out through MPI, like the snow globe and the talking Barnabas figure and the cane they did. But I mean, those are all kind of very few and far in between. They only do limited runs of them, so it's tough for a lot of fans. It's just there's not that big awareness out there. You know, that's why I wish that WB pilot had been picked up. Because you know, it's funny, at the time they wanted to do the pilot and they spent a lot of money on it, but then WB started canceling a lot of their supernatural themed shows, like Charmed and Angel. But then later on, once the CW took over, you know, the Supernatural became huge. I mean, there's a whole big resurgence now in those kind of supernatural themed shows, those horror shows, and I think Dark Shadows wasn't given the chance it deserved.
I agree. I'm excited about the idea of Mark's take, just because it's a sequel to the original show, which hasn't been done on television. I mean, they did it with the audios, but they haven't done it on TV, or on some sort of visual continuation of the show. And I think it would be an interesting experiment. It's like, how do you do a next generation version of Dark Shadows while also bringing in elements of the original and honoring the original? And I mean, I don't know if you saw the interview I did with Mark, but he's got some really cool ideas, and he's clearly a passionate fan. So I'm curious. I hope he gets his chance to do it, you know?
Yeah, he definitely sold me on it. You know, I had read some of the articles and interviews with him, but it wasn't until listening to him on your show that I'm sold on it. I'm whenever there's any announcement of it, anything, I'll I'll be promoting the heck out of it all over. That I'm really looking forward to it. So I really hope it actually comes to fruition.
For sure.
Because I went through all this before with the WB pilot,
Yeah.
and so I really hope. Except with the thing with the WB pilot, it was nothing new. It was just again a retread of that same story,
Right.
you know, that they had done multiple times between the series and House of Dark Shadows and the 91 series.
Yeah.
They were just telling that same origin story over and over again. I like that Mark has an original idea, you know,
Yeah.
something new. And being a big fan of all the Big Finish, I like those new storylines. So I'm really looking forward to that if it happens. But he really sold himself on your show. That I had a lot of people watch that episode, and they've all said the same. It's that they're looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, and he's not, he is a hardcore fan. He's not like somebody who's like, oh, I'm going to attach my name to, he really, since he was a kid, I mean, he's pulling out his scrapbooks from when he was a kid and showing pictures of Barnabas. And yes, Burton and Depp were fans as well, but when I talked to Stuart Manning, he kind of put it into a different perspective for me. And he said especially Tim Burton, which makes it, he's a fan from more of a visual perspective, I think. And like, cause he did the visuals, a lot of the visuals were there. I mean, like I said before, his Barnabas was the only one with the pointy bangs. And he really kind of, it was overboard. I mean, really, kind of ghoulish looking, but still, I mean, sometimes Fred was ghoulish looking too, when he had the makeup and stuff, but he really had that look to it, the sea view look and everything. So that in that regard, I would say, he was expressing his fandom that way.
Well, with Burton, he had released there's a visual book based on the show with a bunch of behind the scenes photos and everything. And you can see there's a couple photos of some of the walls in the production offices where they've got a lot of images of sea view hung up there and different characters from the original show. It's like, so they were trying to, I agree with you. It's definitely visual inspiration from the original series. The house itself, it obviously looks a lot like that famous view of Seaview, but there's little elements of Lyndhurst in there as well.
Yeah.
Which I like. That, but yeah, no, I agree with you.
Awesome, Jeff. Are there any other collectibles you wanted to show before we wrap things up?
Well, with my history with the house as well, back in the 60s when they were filming the show, and they did a lot of the filming there, it was the Newport School for Girls part of the year in Burnham by the Sea, another school that they use there inside the house. And I actually have some of the original yearbooks from during that time.
That's so
this one's
cool.
From 1969. And what I love, I was trying to decide which one to bring with. There's a couple of years ago, there was a guy that was living inside of Seaview Terrace, Adam, that had taken some nice pictures of the house in the wintertime in the snow. And that's a view of the house that we never really see before. You never see Collinwood in the snow. But the thing is, there's that famous tree in front of the house that we always see on Dark Shadows, but that was cut down back in the 70s or early 80s. But I actually found in this yearbook, there's a picture of
oh, there it is. Yeah. Look at that with the snow.
Covered in snow with the tree there.
That's so cool. Wow. Oh, what a treasure. That's so cool that you have that. Oh, nice.
Well, what's nice about these yearbooks is there's a lot of, especially if you're like into the house as much as I am and you visit the house, there's a lot of old pictures in there from all inside and around the house. It's really cool seeing it back then. I've got a lot of pictures of the house when it was new, but there are not a lot of pictures from throughout its history.
Yeah.
So it's cool seeing those views like that. I mean, I've got so much. I mean, we've talked about a lot of my major things that I have in my collection. That's one of my favorites up there, the Barnabas painting.
Yes, I have one of those too.
And actually behind me, I've got, I posted the images online, but there's the Starry Night at Collinwood.
Oh yeah, there it is.
I had made.
Yeah.
And then next to it, that's my very first time visiting Seaview. Back in 2013.
And you're standing in front of it. Yeah.
I went on a road trip with a couple of my friends to all the different Dark Shadows filming locations that we could find. And this was before I started staying at the house. We had just gotten permission to go onto the property, because my first time actually staying at the house wasn't until 4th of July 2014.
Mhm.
But this was summer of 2013. So I've got the canvas print of myself there, and then up on top I've got a picture of myself and my two friends that we did the road trip with.
That's awesome.
But yeah, and actually hanging over there, it's kind of weird, but I found there's this lady that she takes images of like a tattoo off of you, and she kind of makes it kind of look like it's from like a serial killer, like it's flayed skin.
Oh God.
So it's supposed to be like my tattoo, like the skin from my
Oh,
arm
I
flayed.
was wondering what the heck
Yeah.
that was. Oh, I see it. Wow. That is both creepy and awesome at the same time.
Yeah, she prints it
That's
on
awesome.
leather, so it's got that kind of skin texture, and she adds kind of like this kind of gore around the edges of it. And
Yeah.
but yeah, that's my tattoo hanging on my wall up
Yeah,
there.
that's amazing. That is, wow, that's wild. That is a really cool thing to have. Wow.
Yeah.
Very
But
cool.
I'd say by far my favorite collectible would be the coffin set.
The
That's
coffin
all
set.
signed. And it's more so, it's really cool having the signatures on there, especially from some that have passed away. But just the memories that are attached to it with my grandma. My grandma was one of my best friends that I took care of her for the last several years of her life, and took her out to the East Coast. She got to stay at CVU as well. I brought her to one of the parties up there
Oh,
after the
wow.
festival, and she just kind of hit it off with a lot of the other a lot of our group that stay there. They became good friends.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's a lot of memories attached to that coffin set. I mean, that's why, this is a wall of important stuff for me, and I've got that picture with her at the banquet at the festival.
Yeah.
Right
Oh, I
there.
see it. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so sweet. That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
It's great
But,
that you got to experience all of that too with her, and that you gave her that experience of taking her to those things. I'm sure she
she helped raise me, so I figured I'd try to give her a good life as
Yeah.
best as I could.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Jeff, I want to thank you for, taking the time to sit down with me and talk about Dark Shadows collectibles and locations, which was really cool, aspect as well of this conversation, and for digging out some of that merchandise that you have, some of those rare items that you have here to show off, and for discussing that with me. So thank you very much. And the Dark Shadows Collectors Group, this is a great Facebook page. And what were some of the other ones that you mentioned?
My main group that I run is Dark Shadows for All, FORALL. And then those are my main groups, but I also do Dark Shadows, the Old House. I've got the Jonathan Frid fan group. There's another one, Jonathan Frid Material, the Christopher Penick fan group. There's Dark Shadows in the 21st Century. A lot of them, people have made me admin on there to help them run it. But by far, Dark Shadows for All is my main group that I run. I've been the co-admin of it since like October of 2011. So coming up on 11 years now.
Wow.
Because it started off, it was Dark Shadows 2012 was the name of the group originally. And it was all dedicated to the Burton and Depp movie, the 2012 movie. Like any images, anything that was released on the movie, we posted that all on there. But then after it came out, we just decided to focus on all things Dark Shadows. And nowadays, unfortunately, a lot of the groups, we don't really talk about the Depp movie just because it's such a taboo topic.
Oh, I can't even, if I mention it, this episode, there are certain groups that I might not even be able to post this episode to, because just the name Burton is not allowed in some of the groups. So it's, I guess it's still a very divisive, I think it's discussing it, whether you like it or not. I mean, as long as people are civil about it, but unfortunately that's sometimes easier said than done.
Well, I know I've had people tell me that I wasn't a true fan because I enjoyed the movie.
Oh God, come on.
Well, there's also people who say that the only like true fans of the show are the ones who watched it originally when it was on.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that troubles me, and I've gotten that a couple of times too, and that's as a second generation fan, I'm a very hardcore fan too, as you are as well. So that's, a ridiculous assertion to make.
Yeah, I'm only 39 years old. The show went off the air 12 years before I was even born. I mean, that's not my fault. I discovered it as a child like everybody else did, and I watched it, just like everybody else did as a kid. I couldn't watch it when it was on originally.
I think, when people start classifying fans into like, oh, only these fans are actual fans. And I mean, yes, I wasn't there, in 1966. So I didn't experience the context in which the show was aired. However, I think you can love the show and appreciate the content of the show without, I mean, Dark Shadows was such an escape from the real world as it was that I almost, it's like it doesn't matter what era and you watch it in, you're still immersed in that gothic world that Dan Curtis and the writers and the actors created for us, so
yeah, it was its own little bubble that just kind of existed. It didn't delve with the outside world at all. I mean, it was on during the height of the Vietnam War, but that never made its way onto the show. Like you said, it was an escape from all of that. So it's pretty timeless. I mean, yeah, a lot of the 60s part of the present day stuff is kind of dated because it was in the 60s and early 70s. But I mean, a lot of the show takes place in the past. So I mean, it's its own self-contained universe. And I mean, hell, they didn't even have a TV or a toilet on the show. So I mean, it was just of its era, but it's also very timeless as well. I just think a lot of the kids nowadays, it'd be a lot harder for them to really truly get into the original series, just because there are parts of it that do move very slowly and drag. A lot of the kids nowadays just don't have the attention span to really, watch
short attention span theater. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, yeah, a lot of the stuff you see now is just kind of spastic. Like it's kind of, I like the slow burn. I've always been a fan of that. And I enjoy that just as watching it slowly unfold. And I think that's cool. But then as the show goes on, it definitely picks up the pace, for sure. But I think, it doesn't matter when you discovered the show. If you love Dark Shadows, you're a fan of Dark Shadows. You're not any more or less a fan than somebody who discovers it today, who loves it and gets into it, or somebody who watched the first episode in 1966 and got into it. It doesn't matter. And I've gotten a little bit of that. I'm just interrupting myself again as I edit this episode because this topic might be a good one for a future episode. Maybe I'll get a round table going with fans from different generations. The whole idea of this is absurd. And it isn't only with Dark Shadows. I've encountered this in other fan communities as well. And I've always found it doesn't hold water. It would be like saying only those kids who read Superman in the 30s, in the late 30s, early 40s, the golden age era of Superman, those are the only true fans of Superman. Anybody who's subsequently, written books about Superman and researched the lives of Siegel and Schuster and collected Superman memorabilia and collect the comics, those are not as big fans as the original fans. That's absurd. Or people who became fans of Elvis Presley in the 50s when he first appeared on the scene, and those are the only true fans of Elvis Presley. Anybody who's become a fan of Elvis since then is not as big a fan because they didn't experience the context. But originally I had some direct quotes during this conversation with Jeff, but I don't want to target anybody specifically if they're listening to this episode or whatever. I did pull a couple of quotes from my memory that came to mind that I found a little off-putting, I guess, but it is not a common occurrence, I would say, in the fandom. I don't see this happen very often. I've always felt very welcome by everyone, especially in person during festivals or get-togethers or anything like that. I've never felt excluded or less than, I guess. It's more something that I see online. And I think for second-generation fans or third-generation fans, you also have to keep in mind that the shared experience of the first-generation fans in terms of running home from school to watch Dark Shadows and the freshness of it, the excitement of things that were coming out at the time, and just that experience, that nostalgia, not only for the show, but for everything surrounding that era of the show, which even I feel to some degree, even though I wasn't there in the 60s. I have a sort of a, I don't know, a nostalgia for it somehow. And I can't explain it. I think it might be because I only missed that era by a couple of years, and I heard so much about it from my uncle. And I would say I'm from the last generation that watched syndicated reruns as the mainstays of TV. You'd get home, you'd watch Flipper, you watch the Banana Splits, you watch the Monkees, you were watching even 50s stuff was on all over the place. I was watching reruns of all of that stuff growing up. It was 70s into the 80s. So I don't know. I've always been, I've romanticized the past a lot too, so that might be part of it as well. But anyway, I wasn't there, but I know that shared experience that's a huge thing, and that's really important and precious to the first generation fans. I wish I could have experienced Dark Shadows in its first airings, but on the other hand, I was immersed in Dark Shadows from the get-go, all the way through the 70s and the 80s, etc., because my uncle exposing me to it. I did get the experience of sauntering to my grandmother's house to watch Dark Shadows when the bus would drop me off at her house. It was on at 4, so I mean, by the time the bus dropped me off, it was like maybe 2:45. I'd saunter down to my grandmother's house and watch the syndicated episodes of Dark Shadows on Channel 58. But I think there should be some level of understanding that while the experience, contextually speaking, is not exactly the same, it is equally valid in its own way. And the level of information that's available to fans who want to learn more about Dark Shadows is accessible to fans from any generation. Anyway, I want to get back to Jeff here.
Believe me, I've heard that many times over the years, being as young as I am.
Yeah.
Well, compared to a lot of the original fans, that it's I'm not as big of a fan because I didn't get to watch it originally.
That just doesn't make sense. It's like
I've dedicated my life to this show.
Yeah, right. You have a tattoo of freaking Collinwood on your arm. So if anybody says you're not a fan, all you got to do is flash that. Go, say that again. What was that again?
It's crazy.
Hold my beer. Yeah.
At the 2014 fest, I mean, I have so many pictures of this tattoo floating around out there. I had to stand there with my arm out to the side, like for a lot of that festival, just people either checking it out, looking at it, or taking pictures of it. I saw a great tattoo online. I showed Bob at when I was at CV. It was a tattoo of Count Petofi. Somebody has a Count Petofi. I love that even exists, that somebody wanted to put Count Petofi tattoo. I don't know if I've ever seen that one. I know there's a lady that actually has Collinwood across the top of her back.
That's awesome. Wow.
But she thought it was Seaview Terrace, but the image that she gave to her tattoo artist was actually of the 2012 Collinwood. And she hated that movie.
No.
She refused to believe that it was the 2012 version, but we finally convinced her that it was. She even had the fountain in front of the house as well.
Yikes. You would think of something that big that you would, do the research. I hope maybe she got it touched up to.
But I looked at it immediately, could tell that it was the 12 one and not the original one.
Oh yeah, that's unfortunate. If you're listening, I'm sorry that happened, but I'm sure it's still cool looking though.
Oh no, it is. It's very cool looking, but
I swear somebody hasn't got. I wonder if anybody's ever gotten the Leviathan, like the Naga symbol on their wrists.
That would be cool. I know a couple people have Dark Shadows related tattoos. Like a friend of mine, Jenny, she has kind of waves crashing on a rock, and it says "My journey is beginning."
That's cool.
But no, definitely. I've had people tell me I should get the old house on this arm, but this arm's kind of full of tattoos now that I don't really have room for it there.
Yeah, the old house would be a good one. That'd be cool. I saw someone once with I was at a restaurant and she had all kinds of horror tattoos, and I noticed she had Barnabas from the poster, the House of Dark Shadows poster. It's where he's going to bite Maggie and he's like this. I was like, oh, Barnabas. And she was like, yeah, she was a big Dark Shadows fan, but she had all kinds of horror tattoos.
I may get a Barnabas one eventually. It was the perfect placement for this one on my arm. It just fit perfectly on the forearm there because the house is long, so it's
Yeah.
It worked very well.
That's perfect. All right,
Yeah.
Jeff. Well, I want to thank you again. It was a great conversation. I keep like thinking of new things to talk. I'm so excited to get to chat with you since I didn't get to meet you in person at CVU. So thank you again. And I will hopefully we'll get this up in July. Folks, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, etc., wherever your favorite podcast app, if you have an option to rate and review, I would really appreciate it if you did that, because it does help the podcast to grow and to reach more Dark Shadows fans, past, present, and future. So definitely give it a rating, give it a review if you get the opportunity. If you are watching or listening on YouTube, this one is a video version. If you're watching on YouTube, please do subscribe so that you can stay up to date with new video versions. I may do more of these down the road. So do subscribe, do please like the video, share the video with your friends, just to spread the word to fellow Dark Shadows fans who may not be aware of the podcast. So with that said, thank you very much for listening.
And for as long as they lived, the Dark Shadows never truly vanished, for there will always be terror at Collinwood. Terror at Collinwood is a Penny Dreadful production.